Hello and welcome to session 4 of the 360 Degrees of Heidelberg. Our session is called Reflections. I'm Joan Verla. I'm with Arts Core Detroit, which operates or is based out of Wayne State University. We have 4 special guests today who have a long history with the Heidelberg and with Janine and Tyree, and they're going to share some of their favorite memorable experiences. So this will be a lot lighter than the previous sessions, maybe. So I'll introduce them. Unfortunately, Derek Mays is working in Glasgow, Scotland right now, and he will not be able to present today. To my left, I have Daniel Hoops. Daniel's been a practicing attorney since 1995, and a partner with Paisano, Akazian, Epicurean, PC since January of 2018. For the past 10 years, Daniel served as full-time faculty at Walsh College and Northwood University while maintaining a limited practice. Daniel's areas of expertise include estate, tax, and business planning, cryptocurrency and cyber law, real estate development, trademark and copyright litigation, and charitable giving. And next to Daniel, we have Jessica Kerr Moore. She is CEO of Moore Black Press, executive producer of Black Women Rock, and founder of the literacy-driven Jess Kerr Moore Foundation. She's an award-winning, internationally renowned poet, playwright, performance artist, and producer. Jessica's poetry has been heard on stage across the world, including Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, and the London Institute of Contemporary Arts. And next we have...
And the Charles H. Wright.
Yes. We have the Honorable Charles W. Anderson III. He is a retired magistrate of the 36th District Court, serving 21 years. He is graduated from Tufts University and the University of Michigan Law School, and he has practiced law since 1978. Charles is an emeritus board member of the Detroit Institute of Arts and its auxiliary Friends of African and African American Art. And at the far left, we have Jody Fishman-Raines. Jody has been the Vice President of Programs at the Earth Foundation since its creation in 2008. The $280 million Metro Detroit-based foundation's mission is to nurture environmentally healthy and culturally vibrant communities in metropolitan Detroit, consistent with sustainable business models, and to support initiatives to restore the Great Lakes ecosystem. Previously, Jody worked at the Jewish Fund and Skillman Foundation. A graduate of Wayne State University Law School, she has also practiced nonprofit and corporate law in Detroit. So we are going to start with Daniel, and we'll just share our memories, and afterwards we'll have plenty of time. I'll ask a few questions and then we'll open it up and you can ask questions or share some memories of your own that you've had with the Heidelberg Project or Janine or Tyree. Okay, Daniel.
Hi. So to share a memory, or you want me to get into some of the things we were talking about?
We're just share a few minutes memories.
All right, well, I've known Tyree and Janine since 1996, 1997. They came to my office to have some personal estate planning work done. And in talking with them, we decided that instead of paying a legal fee, they would pay in the form of a piece of art. And that was my first, I practice tax law, so that was the first time I ever got involved with somebody where you actually had to include property rather than income in your income tax. And so I remember my dad yelling at me, why are you taking this crazy artist's, painting for legal fees? You've got to pay tax on that. And, how are you going to figure out what the valuation is on that? And so it was kind of a running joke in our family that I was willing to talk to these crazy people who would pay, you hear about rural attorneys being paid with chickens and goats and the like. Well, here I'm working with artists being paid in works of art. So, but we became fast friends after that, and eventually I joined the Heidelberg Project's Board of Directors, and I've been its general counsel for a number of years now. So I've seen some crazy things, but it's been a lot of fun.
We're all just doing that first. Okay. Hi, I'm Jessica. I wasn't really prepared to just share memories necessarily. I had my own approach to what my reflection was, but I've known Tyree and Jenny for I don't know how many years now. But as just a young girl, I remember just being a young girl and coming around Heidelberg Project and just being amazed by that street. This is before I knew who they were, or even probably was an artist myself. I remember the fights, with Detroit City Council and, people not understanding what public art was in Detroit. And then being blessed to be able to move to a place like New York City so I could understand what public art was and the importance of public art. Oh, there's a thing up there? Okay. Yeah, I'm confused. Am I supposed to do what I'm doing? Like, can I do what I want to do? All right, great, because I love Tyree and I love Janine, and they're amazing. And I bullied my way onto the panel because I registered for this event just to come and support it. And I was like, well, why do you ask me to be there? And everybody else does. They ain't got no money. And so I was like, at least if I come show up for things, I'm going to show up for Heidelberg because the Heidelberg is an extension of all the artists in the city. And Tyree is, like, for us, like that foundational artist that has found a way to get known on a global scale. And that's what's really important for Detroit artists because we really can't make a living here. Unfortunately, you have to travel. I've been to I can't even count the amount of cities I've been to in the last 4 weeks just trying to make sure that I can maintain my living in Detroit. Tyree, you see him going to doing residencies in Switzerland and these other places and places like Berlin and so this is what keeps you going as a Detroit-based artist. I'm not a local artist. I'm definitely a national, international working artist, but I choose to live in Detroit. I don't have to live here. And so Tyree and other artists that are here, many, I wish Derek was here, but many of the techno musicians like Mike Banks and Derek, and the ones that choose to stay here when they don't have to be, I think that it's a testament to who Tyree Guyton is and what the Heidelberg Project is, and why we need to take care of him, and why we need to have conferences and talk about putting us in context historically. And so they're a light, for all of us who make art, who paint, who draw, who create. And the picture I had up there, that's my daddy. And so that's my daddy, Thomas Davis Moore, who's been an inspiration for me since I was a very little girl. And if not for him and his tenacity and his independence, showing me I can't work for other people. It's just not in my blood, to be able to get up and go work, make something else happen for somebody else's dream. So I like Tyree, I guess he woke up and he had polka dots in his head, but when I wake up, I have my imagination is so vast, and I couldn't contain myself, even as a young poet, inside of a book. It just wasn't enough, never enough. So I, put my poems with rock and roll, and put my poems with jazz, and put my poems with hip hop, and now I have a techno choreo poem that I was calling an Afrofuturistic ballet that thankfully got awarded by Knight and Joyce Award. My director is sitting right in front of me, Yaku Kadogo, who's also a gift to the city and a star and an amazing talent, who's directing the piece next year. So, because I wanted to talk about Detroit in the future, and because often the conversation is about Detroit right now, which becomes just tired as hell, and or Detroit in the next 5 years, and Detroit's going to be so great. And so I wanted to talk about Black people in particular are still the majority in the city, actually still being here in 2071, because that's my concern, is that there's still the Black people who built the city and made it great and made it what it was, people like my daddy, that their legacy and who they are is still ingrained in the pulse of the city in centuries to come. So that's what Salt City is. I have a poem I'm going to read, but I think I'll wait and let everyone talk, and then maybe I'll do the poem a little later. So that's my thoughts. You go.
She's actually surrounded by 3 attorneys.
Attorneys,
No.
I figured that
I got
She's very
contracts.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Around 27, 28 years ago, my wife and I read an article about Heidelberg Project, either the Free Press or Metro Times, someplace like that. We were fascinated by what we read, and since we lived rather close to it and it was walkable, we decided to go and take our son Chaz with us, who was about 3 years old at the time. Now, at that time, I was a practicing lawyer. I wore custom-made suits, bow ties. I was on the board of directors of the Founders Junior Council at the DIA. Founders Junior, and had been on that since 1985. Now, Founders Junior Council, the whole purpose was it was like a petri dish to take young people and you raise them to get on other boards at the DIA. So it was very straight-laced, and it was to support the Detroit Institute of Arts. Well, we make the turn from Mount Elliott on to Heidelberg, and my whole notion of art, to quote James Bond, suddenly got shaken, not stirred. Because before us, we saw street doors, or the entire street had like doors on it that were painted with polka dots, shoes hanging from trees, boats on the grass that were painted with polka dots, empty houses on both sides of the street that either had polka dots or numbers painted on them. And in the middle of the street, there was this black guy who was ramrod straight, had on, and you could not miss them, shiny, shiny, shiny black combat boots, pushing a push broom. And the street was already clean, and this guy's like still cleaning it. Well, Susan and I were pretty wide-eyed. Our son Chaz was screaming with delight because these are things he found rather interesting. It wasn't the normal stuff like inside our house. The guy comes up to the car, and it turns out that's Tyree Guyton. Shortly afterwards, Susan and I are walking around, and lo and behold, our son Chaz and Tyree are in one of the alleys next to Heidelberg pushing a push broom full of paint. They were making some art project. We did take a photograph of that, but we can't find it, so that's why it's not up there. Within days of meeting Tyree, we had purchased a piece of art. It's the one on top. It's called Sisters Feud, which was a very personal meaning for Tyree and personal meaning for us and our family. Next thing we know, we get in touch with Tyree because I didn't know how to hang it. So Tyree is then wife Karen and his mentor, Grandpa Mackey, his grandfather. They come by to our house for dinner, hang that. Grandpa Mackey brings a box load of his framed art, which was very, very interesting. And I did run across a piece that I found in a tube. I was going to bring it, and I forgot. A few days later, Tyree comes by, and he made the thing with the bat. It's called Batter Up, that he made for, on the back of it's written, to baby Chaz from Tyree. So I think our son at 3 was the youngest owner of a piece of Tyree Guyton art. My wife and I have, since we're so close to Heidelberg Project, we've always, it's easy to drive by, and we've always treated it as going over there as a form of therapy and meditation. For years, because we tend to be out and about a lot, we'd meet people who were just coming to Detroit, and we would tell them, oh, you have to go to the Heidelberg Project, or we would take them over there. Over the years, that has changed. Now, we meet visitors to Detroit, and we're talking to them. They've already been to the Heidelberg Project, or it's on their list.
Yes.
And So, and these are people that, be at Avalon, will meet a woman from Amsterdam if she wants to go to the Heidelberg Project. And so it's now on everybody's radar. So we have been with the Heidelberg Project during the bulldozings. If you heard Janine's introductory comments this morning, there was a period where she shows up with her daughter Chloe at our house, and we're sitting on the carpet in our living room, and we're going over, okay, Janine, now what are you gonna do? And we sat there with our children for the better part of the day, brainstorming on Heidelberg. So we've been there through the 2 bulldozing episodes, the lawsuit to stop Coleman Young, getting witnesses in from Yale to testify on Heidelberg's behalf about Sweetheart. Just everything. And through it all, the project and Tyree have prevailed. And now, Tyree is in the DIA. They own some of his pieces. He's got a degree from CCS, so he's Dr. Guyton. He's worked on projects all over the country. He's worked on projects all over the world. The prevailing wisdom is that, quote unquote, all roads lead to Heidelberg. These days, people think twice before messing with Janine.
Yes.
And now Tyree wears a mean bow tie. I'm done.
I'm going to use this because I don't have a very loud voice. So I might be a little different than everyone else because I'm going to talk a little bit more about a professional relationship, but with Janine and Tyree and Heidelberg, it's also personal because you can't really have just a professional relationship with them because they're such special people, and it's just this deep, meaningful work. So I first heard about Heidelberg. I was working at the Skillman Foundation in the early 2000s is probably the first time I heard about them, but I didn't go over there for some reason until 2007, and I had 2 kids. And I think, I'm trying to think of what compelled us to go there on that particular day, but I think there was some kind of an anniversary celebration, and I wish I would have given you the picture to put up there. We all bought the polka dot t-shirts, and we immediately put on the polka dot t-shirts, and we just had a great time, like, kind of running around checking the art out, and we all posed in our polka dot t-shirts, and it's a really cute picture. And then, I don't know if it was Janine or who it was that actually took us around and talked to us about the art, and some of it's pretty disturbing, the shoes in the oven, and my kids were young and really sensitive, and my older one was really deeply disturbed and actually wouldn't go back for a number of years, but it's really deep stuff there. So anyways, that was the first time I actually saw Heidelberg Project, and then in 2008 I got hired by the Herb Family Foundation, it's a brand new foundation, to help them create their mission. And this was a family that supported lots of things: education, arts, environment, healthcare. And so as we were trying to settle on what really we were going to do, I had the Heidelberg Project in the back of my mind, and it really influenced the creation of this area of funding that we have called Arts and Community Life. And the idea was is to support arts organizations. We don't support artists, it has to be organizations, 501c3s, but to support organizations that are really working with community and engaging community and using art to help strengthen their neighborhoods. These projects are really hard to come by. But we've been supporting Heidelberg now for about 10 years, $650,000 over the course of that time. So anyways, so 2008, it kind of influenced the creation of the mission, and then I finally met Janine. In 2009, a friend, Sharon Luckerman, a lot of you know her, said, I want you to, because I didn't tell anyone that's really what influenced our arts and community life. I just described the mission, and we put out a call for proposals, and Sharon said, you really need to talk to Janine. So we met at a coffee shop in Birmingham, and Janine ran out of gas, I remember that. It was kind of tough times then. But it was a great meeting, and we got a proposal, and we made our first grant in around 2009, and it was $100,000 over 2 years, which was really the first major foundation grant. And I was looking through our materials to see like how I justified this to our board of directors. And they're a great board of directors. I mean, I get it, they've been supporting all along, but you know, you have to write out recommendations for the board. So this is what we said was, Heidelberg's been developing community connections and international recognition for years, and having just recently received an audit, because you have to have an audit to get a foundation grant, and NEA grant through a fiduciary, they're now poised to take the next step in actualizing their vision of using art to revitalize a very poor area of the city. They're kind of the poster child for such work, and a grant to help them hire key staff could help them immensely. So I think our grant helped them. You know, you can be, Janine and Tyree and their board have a lot of energy and vision, and you know, they work really hard, but you know, if you have a nonprofit organization, you really need staff. And as staff, you really need to have funds to pay the staff. So they really didn't have paid staff until our first grant to them, and I think helped them hire a development director. So halfway, so it was a 2-year grant, and so we review our grants halfway through the process. And so when it came time to approve the 2nd-year payment, we said to Janine, you know, how about if we make a little, put in a little challenge here for you. We'll increase it, so instead of $50,000, we'll give you $75,000 if you can raise $50,000. So you have a choice, Janine. You can either go for the challenge, or you can, it's kind of like door 1 or door 2. But you can go for the challenge, or you can just stick with your $50,000 grant. Janine's really gutsy, and you know, they hadn't raised $50,000 before, and she said, I'm going to go for it. And she raised that money, and she got the match from us, and every grant that we made after that had a challenge grant because they found it helpful to help them raise money. You know, over the last 9 years, just learned a lot from them. And we can talk later about it as a funder, what we've learned. And my husband and I become friends with them. My husband makes the picture frames for Tyree's shows. Now he made the TV that I could have took to Spelman, the big Heidelberg TV box. He made that box for them. But so we can talk more later about like, the things we've learned, but I think one of the most difficult times that we've experienced with them was the fires. Although even that was a learning experience. So we have a video, a short video to show you guys about how I think Tyree and Janine, they take everything and process it and come out stronger on the other side. I think this video kind of helps capture that. That wasn't the reason for the video. I just sent a really talented young videographer out there and said, talk to Tyree and create a video that, you know, you think makes sense, and this is what they came up with, so we'll watch that.
Nothing lasts forever. Change is inevitable. Well, this place here, the Heidelberg Project, is an outdoor, radical, whimsical art environment. It's one we've asked some very important questions about what is art today.
There's 195 countries in the world. 140 have visited the Heidelberg Project just by way of signatures in our guest book. So then a pride starts to build in people. And now you have people who formerly didn't understand Heidelberg, who now are sitting on their porches greeting and meeting people from all over the world.
I've met people from all over the world. I finally met somebody from Poland. I said, I couldn't believe it. I met somebody from Poland about a month and a half ago, you know. I guess we get pretty close to a million people here, I imagine.
What's beautiful about Heidelberg is that we were able to brag that in the 27 years that we've been here, there have been no serious reported crimes. And then lo and behold, someone decided to strike a match. And one fire turned into 9 over a period of 11 months. Heidelberg was literally on fire. And so we lost 6 prominent art installations that Tyree had created over the years. A lot of time, a lot of energy burned in seconds.
It was painful at first, but I had to get over that, and I had to go deep down into my subconscious and to realize that it was time for change, and that life was changing me, and it was getting me ready for something greater.
What has happened as a result of the fires is, of course, now we have a state-of-the-art security system on site, but we were able to introduce our community to green technology, because now there are 6 solar lights installed within the Heidelberg project community, which means that now the community has more lights.
I've seen them before, but not in my neighborhood. Yeah, I think they're fantastic.
Number one, they're very beautiful to see them here in an area that is faced with all kind of challenge. No, they didn't burn the product down to the ground. The product is still here, and it's better now than before. Repetition, it's everything. Life itself has a way of repeating itself over and over, round and around. Everything is moving, round and around and around. Nothing lasts forever. Change is inevitable.
So I'll just say about the music. To our mind, Heidelberg's a lesson in the role of creativity, bravery, and resiliency in a struggling city. There's much more you can say about it, but I wanted to say that little bit about it. So.
Thank you. Yes. That is a great video. You ended with creativity, bravery, and resiliency being that the Heidelberg is a lesson in the role of creativity, resiliency, and bravery. You work with other organizations, so how are those 3 things intrinsic to all nonprofits, whether they're art-based or not?
I have to say Heidelberg is unique, but we do mostly fund in Detroit. We fund a little bit in the metro Detroit, mostly in the city of Detroit. And since we were started 10 years ago, things have been Detroit's been the way it's been for the last 10 years. I think that the organizations, we tend to work with smaller and medium-sized organizations, a lot of environmental organizations and arts organizations. And face it, I mean, to succeed in Detroit, you have to be creative, you have to be brave, you got to be resilient. I think some organizations exhibit more than others, and I think the question is, as a foundation with your grants, is there a way to help build that in organizations? It's really struggle a lot, like what really can you accomplish with grants? And so I think it's a combination of course, the money helps, like keep the lights on, hire staff, start new programs, but it's about getting to work with the organizations and know them and help introduce them to each other also. I think they help each other a lot too. And I think we just, as a city, we all need to work together, right? And so that's part of that resiliency. And the bravery to kind of step outside and work with others. So it's, I think not every organization exhibits it in the same way, but, I have a lot of respect for the people in the organizations doing the work in the city.
Mm-hmm. Charles.
Yes.
I was wondering, has meeting Tyree at such an early age influenced the creative direction of your son, Chaz?
I think so. Aside from probably being the youngest person to have a piece of his artwork, Chaz is a millennial, and he is just starting to take art from our house. He lives in Denver. So I think it has, it's had its effect on him. One moment of coincidence is that Tyree's exhibit 2 + 2 = 8. He's quoted in Metro Times as saying, well, it all boils down to making something out of nothing. And our son has a collective in Denver where he puts on after-hours techno parties. Since Detroit's the home of techno, he seems to pick that up. And his collective is called Soon, which is something out of nothing. And I found that was very nice that he and Tyree are on the same wavelength. So that's the answer to that question.
Okay, Daniel, I didn't realize that Heidelberg actually has a registered trademark and
Copyright.
or copyright.
Yeah.
So can you tell us how that came about?
Well, we are, a lot of people aren't aware of this, we're the only street in America that's got a copyright. So I joke a little bit about, we could kind of be like the troll by the bridge and charge people, a toll to pass down Heidelberg Street. But it was actually something that came out of the second demolition in 1999. As some of you may or may not be aware, we had a demolition, and a lawsuit was filed against the city of Detroit. And at the time, for me professionally, it wasn't the best time. We merged our family law firm with a big firm downtown, and our big firm worked with the city of Detroit. So I was conflicted out, and I even went in to plead with some people, let me help. So I ghost wrote the lawsuit. We had two other attorneys who handled the trial, and we were in regular contact. In fact, one of them, Greg Sywak, was a member of the board and a close friend. And so they argued the case in the trial. And, whenever you look at anything, whether it's a demolition or the lawsuit, you might think it was all negative, it was bad. There's always a learning that comes out of it. For one, there was a very important holding that the judge made in that case that was not appealed by the city of Detroit. And it was that the Heidelberg project is art that's protected under the First Amendment. And that stuck. It was never appealed. So that was a very definitive holding that was made in that case. But during that trial, during that process, we realized that we were kind of short-handed on a few things. Yes, the Heidelberg project, whether we had it registered or not, it could be considered a copyright. But you can't sue somebody in federal court on a copyright claim unless you actually are registered with the Library of Congress. And so in order for us to take that next step to actually sue somebody for violating our copyright, we had to be registered. And we've never had to use that against the city. Where it's actually come up has been on the commercial side, where we've had people come by and take photos of the project and use it for commercial exploitation. And we've had some funny instances, we've had some interesting instances. One of them actually that really offended me personally was there was a real estate agent from Bluefield Hills who took a picture of his daughters, and he was white. So these two little white girls running in front of one of the houses, and made a little ad that they mailed out to people and said, do you want this to be your next house? Almost like the little girls were running away from a boogeyman. Although if you look closer at the picture, the girls were actually having fun. So I sent this real estate agent, the attorney with the cease and desist letter. We have another term for it in the office, but I want to use it here. Letting them know that your ad is violating our copyright, and not only am I making a demand that you pull all those out, but you pay us some money. You can't just do that. And this guy freaked. He freaked out. He was almost in tears when he called me, and he called Janine, and we ended up working something out with him. But he didn't mean to offend. And I was like, dude, this is really offensive what you're doing here. This is a piece of art. But we've had instances where, actually, this is something that you would appreciate. We get a lot of musicians and artists that want to use us as a location to do a video shoot. And, I always tell Tyree and Janine, make me the bad guy. Just say the lawyer, just this nameless face, the lawyer. So we charge a license fee for people to use the project for various things. And I've had some clients who are like, come on, man, can't you get Tyree to waive that fee? No, sorry, we can't do it. It's a copyright. We have to protect it. And copyright is owned by the Heidelberg Project itself, which is a nonprofit. And no, if we start giving away benefits, waiving copyright licensing fees, we actually might be violating our 501c3 rules. So I've got us tied up where nobody's getting freebie anymore. But an interesting thing that happened, and I don't know how much you want me to talk. A few years ago, I randomly, like Charles, I will randomly just end up on the project. It might be in an area, and I'll stop by. And this was years ago, before he was recently convicted in Philadelphia. But I just randomly was on Heidelberg Street, and there weren't a lot of people, we were on tourists, and I saw Tyree, and he was pissed. And I go walking beside, I'm like, what's going on? He said, man, there's this van driving around here with a camera crew shooting video, and somebody says Bill Cosby, and I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm like, well, where are they? We saw them going down Elba Street. He said, that's them right there. I said, let me be the bad guy. And so, you know, the van comes by, and they were going at a pretty good clip, too. You know, they had the sidewalk where they're just shooting video of Heidelberg Street. Bill Cosby was not in the van, though. I was thinking, damn, I'm going to meet Bill Cosby. This is years ago, as I said. So I stopped the van, and I told the crew, I said, you know, what are you doing? Oh, you know, this is for Bill Cosby. You know, we're doing a promotional thing here. It's very important for the city of Detroit. You should be proud that we're here. And I said, hold up. I'm like, you know, this is copyrighted. This whole street is copyrighted. And you can't just do this. Like, well, you know, Bill Cosby, you know, this is going to promote this. This is going to make this an international thing. I said, man, we are international. But people know who we are. And I said, and we actually have a sign on both ends of the street that says that this is a federal copyright. You can't do this. And they're like, well, you know, what do you want us to do? And I said, well, I would think that Bill Cosby is an artist, and we decided we were going to start pirating, you know, episodes of The Cosby Show or some of his records. I think he might be a little pissed off. And that's what you're doing to this man over here. And they, you know, kind of stopped, and they drove off, never came back. We never heard anything more about it. But I like to say that Tyree and I ran Bill Cosby off the Heidelberg project. But yeah, we've had a few. In fact, it was, and Tyree's tie with the music community is an interesting thing for me personally or professionally. You know, I'm Derek May's attorney, and I met Derek because I guess he went down to the project when he was running the Movement Festival and was having some issues with the city, and he was complaining, oh, you know, I need your lawyer, man. Your lawyer, you're going to get more trouble with this project. I need your lawyer. Not that I do anything, but he just had this perception, I guess. I need your lawyer. And so he said, well, I don't just give his number out. So I got a call from Tyree, and he said, hey, Derek May wants your phone number. And I said, Derek May? He said, yeah, but I'm going to give it to him. I said, so I took down his number, and you can call him if you want to. And then, coincidentally, 3 years later, he called me up and he said, I got this guy down here named Proof. And Proof is looking to start his own label, and he wants your phone number, and college was with him too. So he wants your phone number, and you know, at the time I'm thinking, I'm old, you know, so I don't know all the hip things. And so I'm like, Proof. You know, so I Googled, I'm like, oh, that guy. I'm like, well, I better call this guy up. And so I became friends with Proof, and you know, he was a huge supporter of the project too. So, but Tyree just has this magic in the project that's about bringing these people to the Heidelberg project. So that's copyright.
Yes. I will say that the first time that I went to the Heidelberg project in the early 2000s, I too was somebody that saw a man pushing a broom in the middle of the street cleaning up and met Tyree. That was a long time ago, and I'm sure he doesn't remember, but I feel like there's a lot of people that their first impression, or not the first impression, but their first experience of Heidelberg was seeing Tyree taking care of the place.
Yeah, it's funny you said, the first time I went down Heidelberg Street was in the early, I think it was 1990. And he was on one of the house, I think he was actually on the Baby Doll house. And it was the winter. And I slowed down, I was with this friend of mine who wanted to show it to me. Because I think you guys were in Life magazine, I think it was in Life magazine. It just was getting a little publicity. And he was up there on the roof all by himself, and I stopped, and I just kind of gave him one of these. And I told him, I was like, I think you flipped me off. But he doesn't wait.
Okay, Jessica. There are 3 principles that this conference is based on, and 2 of them are art is medicine, and the second one is art is a catalyst for positive change. And you've written and performed many really powerful pieces. And you once said, art is a way to explore that we actually survived. And I think that the Heidelberg is an example of that as well. For you, is exploring your survival medicine or medicinal?
I mean, come on. You know, so everyone knows that art is a great healing force, and Detroit has a lot of healing energy, just being the city that we are, the survival city that we are. And Yeah, the tenacity of Heidelberg is the tenacity of Detroit people. And my writing, is deep because, everything is ingrained. Even when I lived in New York and other places, I always had to come back to this very magical place called Detroit. And just, and you talk about people bringing, like I brought Omari Hardwick to Heidelberg just quietly. I didn't really post pictures, but all my famous friends that have come here, if they have a moment, I take them here. Ursula Rucker, very famous poet out of Philadelphia. Talib Kweli, a famous rapper out of Brooklyn. And so these are people I just quietly say, you want to go see something in Detroit? And because that's internationally known as it is, that's what happens. Like, it's internationally known, like we know. And then sometimes, people in other places, it's just a little bit off the radar still. So I brought, some of those people, like Omari Hardwick was just like, what is this? He took like a gazillion pictures that he probably never posted because he just wanted to have the moment to himself. And then I have performed right on Heidelberg Street when they've had shows, and for one of the anniversaries I performed at the Car Center, I think many years ago, that was that car. It's just like one of those places, like if they call, you just say yes. There's a lot of people I wish would stop calling me, but I like. But yeah, and I want to read this piece. I had this other thing, because I've been trying to think about what I wanted to offer. And there was this longer piece that I was going to do called Call Our Names, but it's just too long. And so, because we spoke about fires, I remember the heartbreak of those fires. I remember how Janine was feeling when those fires were happening. And I remember also, back in the day, like I know people, that big argument, I was still maybe in high school, when I remember people talking about the Heidelberg Project, and some people who just either you loved it or you didn't. But this is called There Was a Fire in Her Belly. I just speak better in poems. And it's really about the resilience of who made me, which is my mother and father. And then it's just called There Was a Fire in Her Belly. And I just want to do it for Janine and Tyree. That's it. 1971, Tom and Irene answered back, made their first post-riot daughter, battle-fed naivety and rainbows that included black and pride. 1971, she questioned everything. There was a fire in her belly, there was a fire. But can't nobody afford no fires in Detroit, she better give that baby back. I could hear the gunshots mixed with Isaac Hayes, my brothers pretending to know karate, blue, brown belts chopping the wind. I knew I was different early. I used to like to break glass and examine the mirror for hours at a time. I knew I was somebody's secret. I didn't start all them fires. I'm just a little girl. I'm just a little brown girl. I'm just pigtails and poems and waiting. The words just come out that way, twisted, transformed into something new, something I could eat and not choke on. This was my story and I was gonna tell it. This was my story and I was gonna tell it, whether they wanted me to tell it or not. I was 9 years old when I attempted to write my first novel. I don't know if I'd read 9 novels, but I was 9 and I wanted to write one, still writing it. They say there are ghosts in that house I was born in, running up and down the stairs. Maybe they're looking for the family that used to fill it up, checking for the pencil markings on the walls to score how tall we'd grown, or the bird that died, the dog that ran off sometimes. Maybe they're just looking for the kids. 4 to a house minimum used to make this block noisy. Maybe they're trying to find at least 1 2-family household in this city. They could just be bored, might be laid off, stressed out. Sometimes ghosts take to running. I know I did. For 12 years I was gone like the wind ghost, but the wind just moves in circles, smoke signals they say, picking up dust and a husband or two. At least I'm trying, at least I'm writing. Somebody gotta tell them we live in this city and we are not ghosts.
Wonderful. I think I'll just ask one more question before I open it up, and that's going to be for Jody. When people report, when the grantees report back, they have to show impact. So I'm just wondering, for Heidelberg or some of these other projects or organizations that are, different. I'm just wondering how that can be measured. Do you have your own tools to measure it, or?
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
We have a secret tool to measure
Yeah.
the impact of Heidelberg. No, it's really hard. I've worked for a few different foundations, and measuring impact is really hard when you're really working on, community impact and long-term social change. We're not talking about you can measure, you can count how many people visited, you can count how many kids were served by a school-based program, and those are kind of outcomes, and that's great. But what's really the long-term impact that Heidelberg is working towards? I think, Janine is an excellent writer. So she writes great reports. I know earlier she said she doesn't write good proposals and reports. They're great. We're a place-based funder, and you really have to kind of, if you're working on community, you have to really kind of live and kind of work with the people in the community, or at least the organizations that you're working with. I don't claim that I understand every person who lives in every neighborhood, even though I live in the city. So anyways, it's a combination of the reports and just kind of experiencing it and feeling it, and then trying to convey that to your board of directors and other people. And luckily we have a really great board of directors that I think just gets things. It is, I think the kind of change that Heidelberg is trying to make is really hard to measure. And in the last session they were talking about Heidelberg 3.0 and the new vision for a community village. So that's actually been the vision since we started supporting them. They've had a vision for a community village, and it's kind of an artist village. It's kind of coming down in different forms, but I guess that's still the long-term vision. So I think once that's there, I think you can see that. But then measuring the impact of that village, how do you really measure that stuff, But you can see it, you can feel it. You can get stories, from people who are experiencing it. And I guess I'll just say that, we know that the change takes a long time. So when you're making 1-year grants, 2-year grants, and you're getting a report on what happened during that grant, it's kind of challenging. So I can't answer the question really.
Right.
Because it's just hard.
I think you did, because actually, the impact is told in the stories, and everybody has stories, and if there were no stories to be told, then there probably wasn't that much of an impact. So anyways, right now we can open up the floor to any questions out there for our panel members, or if you want to share a memory that you have of Heidelberg, or Janine and Tyree.
That lady right there.
Oh, look at us. It's all you, Janine.
Yes. I just want to say, and I think this is really important, the reflections and the stories that people tell to me are the most dynamic. And is Jules in here? She's not. Okay, she's in the other session. But Jules and Jody, to me, and this is not a plug, I don't have to plug Jody, I can just say what I really want to say. One of the things that these foundations do that's different than other foundations are, and I always say this, their roots are to the ground. They are in and learning. They're not just giving you a check. They see what you're doing. They can appreciate. And I think that gives them an opportunity to be an advocate for you, even when you're not writing a grant, because they were there and they showed up. And I just wanted to encourage any other foundations that are in the room that it can make your job more fun to actually get out there and see what some of your grantees are actually doing and experience that. And Jody's the reason that we're doing this conference. And I wrote that, but it's true, to be able to bring our work together after 32 years. And I didn't want to do it, but it's been so important. I'm so glad I did. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else want to share a story?
I'll share a story. So, Susan was my unofficial, uncompensated counselor through a really rough patch when, things were changing with my mom. And I used to have coffee with her all the time in the morning and just chat, and she invited me to her home for dinner. So I was at dinner at Charles and Suzanne's. I don't know when this was. I know it happened. I don't know when it happened. And there was another couple there, and we were sitting in the backyard, and Charles and Suzanne had one of Tyree's pieces, one of his God faces, in the backyard. And I looked at it and I said, gosh, and I was sitting next to Tyree. I said, I just love those. I see them all over town. I wish I had one. I said, I just wonder whose face it is, or something to that effect. And he looked and said, it's God. And I said, well, how do you know? He said, that's what I think God looks like. I said, those are yours? You know? And he was like, yeah, that's me. And it just kind of hit me. I had been to Heidelberg. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't know that it was him. This was kind of pre everyone having a Google in their hands. And I didn't know what Tyree looked like. I didn't know at all. And so it was just delightful to sit there and speak with him in such an unassuming way, and to come into their orbit. And here I am.
Yeah, so Charles mentioned when he was speaking that he used to go to the Heidelberg. It was therapeutic and meditative. And I don't know if you could say a little bit more about that. Why was that specifically more therapeutic than a gallery or a
Well,
museum?
it's outside, and it's spacious. It's always changing. Nobody bothers you. There may be other people there. If you run into them, it may be at some whimsical piece over there, then you may not see them for 45 minutes until you're over some other whimsical piece. But, you know, by and large, nobody bothers you. Nobody hassling you on the street. You can walk down the middle of the street or do hopscotch, and you're not going to get hit by a car. Every once in a while, because the cars drive so slowly, because people are rubbernecking, looking at this, looking at that, it's a perfect place. I had two other things to say.
Go ahead.
When Janine was talking about the herbs, Susan and I stopped by for some reason when they had their office on Watson Street, and in the kind of the meeting room, we met the herbs. They were there, hands-on, just like Janine says. And so they weren't, these hands-off people who just mail you a check. They were actually there. Second thing is, someone mentioned the white dinner party, the Dîner Blanc. It started in Paris. It still goes on. It got picked up in various cities in the States. One city that picked it up is Detroit. And basically, the way it works is you get invited to join by groups and subgroups. There is your mysterious leader who nobody knows. There was one year we were at Easter Market, and security shows up, and what are you guys doing? And we'd already started eating, and we took over like several sheds at Easter Market. It was their security. We wanted to talk to the leader. Nobody knew who this person was. And fortunately, my wife Susan was there, and she had Dan Carmody's phone number and calls him up, and he's the CEO of Easter Market, and things got worked out. Well, you don't know where it's going to be until the week before. And one year it ended up at Heidelberg Project. There are about 6 people in the room right now that have been to it. I'm not going to identify. But you have maybe about 1,200 people descending on whatever location is given. They are dressed in white. They bring their own food. All the tables are set up in white. All the decorations are in white. And it's feast upon feast upon feast. The decorations can be simple. Some of them are incredibly intricate. And it goes on from about 4 o'clock or so until it gets dark out. And so there we were, all up and down both sides of Heidelberg, and then spreading into the lawn here, there. This was before the fire started, right? Yeah. Janine? It was. And it was just...
No, it was after, Charles.
It was?
Yeah, it was after.
Oh, okay. So it was just an incredible event. Actually, it was super hot because Susan didn't show up because it was one of those days like in the 90s or something. But that was like an incredible event at Heidelberg, one of those things you don't forget. And that's it.
And did they have permission to do that? Or did they storm upon the
Well,
street?
they did leak to us that they were coming because of the sensitivity of it being in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so the oldest resident on Heidelberg, or on Hollingsworth, was 104, and she got to sit at the king table.
Oh,
So
right,
it was
right.
a really special thing that the neighbors actually participated as well. It was really special, so we did get notice out of that. But I don't know who sent the notice. It was like secret.
Are there anybody else want to share a memory or? Okay, go ahead.
My name is Aria. Excuse me. I'm actually an artist in Detroit. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, so I just do a lot of things. But I don't even know. Like being connected to the Heidelberg Project was also meditative for me in a way and healing in some aspect. And I think it's because being an artist, there's so many reasons, but one of the main reasons is being an artist. Tyree gives you something to look inspired to be. You know, like there are times where I'll, put a poem out there or something like that, right? And I'll just hate it for some reason. And you get so insecure about your work and it's hard, right? But I've never had a piece of art that somebody hated so much to take the time out of their day to burn it down,
Right.
And I also don't know how I would react to it. Like, it must seem so hard, But to hear about how Tyree pulled it together and how he used this not as a failure or a reflection of his own worth or his creative energy, but as a redirect. That's so inspirational to me, and that's why I wanted to be a part of this so bad. And I think that that's the healing aspect. It made my problem seem a lot less, problematic too. It just made my problem seem real small. So, yeah, I don't know, that's a connection that I have.
When was the first time you went?
The first time that I went,
Yeah.
it was actually really reluctant. I hadn't heard good things about the project, right? Yes, and my mother did not, she still does not believe in the project the way I do now, right? But one of my friends was a tour doctor, and she said she would listen to some of my poetry, she would talk to me, and she got to know me. And she said, I know that this would be good for you. I know that you would like this. And I'm like, girl, I heard this, I can't, I just don't really think this is me.
I asked you that because that's the thing about the Heidelberg Project is there's so many haters out there. You read about it and, not many of them actually been down there or they have, they fly by, but I think that what you're describing is exactly what I think probably everybody in the room here has experienced, which is, and it's a reflection of Tyree, but now it's really just kind of fanned out where it's just this thing, this project where everybody sort of has become an ambassador of it. I mean, Jessica mentioned bringing people in from out of town. Some people ask to go there, other people you take there, schools. There's a school from California, I took them on 3 different years, took them on a tour, and they came this past year, they didn't even tell me they were coming here, but they went to the Heidelberg Project. It's now become part of their regular thing, it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Which dossier was it, so we can thank that one? Or those, was it?
Excuse me?
Who was your guy we told you about, so we can give them a whole
You
thing?
should introduce yourself.
You
You should
don't?
stand up and tell them who you are and what you're doing.
Okay, my name is Ariel Mock, Hard Art, and I am an art teacher for the Heidelberg Art Leadership Academy. Yeah, so I teach kids how to express themselves and how to explore the world around them and themselves through poetry and literature. So, yeah, it's really it's a snowball effect for me. Like, it really just has become something that's really a part of my life. It's great.
Cool.
But the girl who introduced me was Afi. She used to be a tour guide for you. She pulled me, she said, go on one tour with me. And I promise you it would change your life. So I went on the tour and it did. So I just, now I'm a tour guide and a teacher.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
A year ago, in September, the John Michael Kohler Art Center in Chicago, Wisconsin had a conference called The Road Less Traveled, and it was the first conference I ever enjoyed. And
foundation wants me to do a conference next year. What am I going to do? I've never done a conference. I said, I've never done a conference either. Quite frankly, just do it the way you do everything else. And I just wanted to thank Janine and the whole team for pulling this on, because this is the second conference I'm ever going to enjoy.
I was thinking about that conference thing, Janine, you keep blaming us for it. You put it in a proposal somewhere saying you were going to do something like this.
But it wasn't a
But anyways, yeah. Anyways, I just want to say, so when we had suggested a conference, what we had in mind was Heidelberg's an internationally known project. I mean, we had pictured all these national experts coming in, national people coming in and talking about Heidelberg and what it means for the world. But working with Heidelberg, we don't tell them what to do, we just kind of have ideas, and they always go their own way. And Janine made this is more like, she did, I think, what, it's working out, this is a beautiful conference. It's really more of like a celebration, like a really local celebration. And besides, we have all these really great national experts here, all these wonderful people who are talking about what it means. So I think this is really like a Heidelberg-style conference, which isn't what we had in mind. Of course, it's never what we have in mind when we start working with them.
But can I add to that, that's precisely my point. The talent, the richness that our city possesses, we undervalue. And really what we did with this conference is we brought together people in this city that are hot in other places. Jasmine Kier Moore is known around the world, Derek May, Tyree Guyton. Some of the people and what we've done here in the city of Detroit is celebrated in other places. But I always say this, we have to learn how to wrap our arms around ourselves. And this is like the kind of way to do that, in addition to building a stronger and more supportive platform for the arts to flourish in Detroit.
I want to ask you, Jody, about the Heidelberg TV, because it's one of my favorite. As you know, I loved it so much when I saw it. I was like, I have to have it where I am.
King was all in that TV.
Yes, I loved it a lot. So was I. I did the same thing. I jumped in and then I said, I want to replicate it. Would you tell me a little bit about your husband built it?
Yeah, but it wasn't his idea. He's just a rough carpenter, and he just does stuff to help Tyree out. So
Well,
it was Tyree's idea.
I love that idea about even bringing other people together, because that's what I want you to talk about.
And I don't know all that much about it. Tyree's idea was he wanted to put a television on Heidelberg Street because he wanted kids to be able to get behind it. He thought it might, I think, help people kind of loosen up, like they're kind of, when you're on stage, right, you can, I think, be someone else. And so I think he wanted to give that experience to the kids and to the people on Heidelberg Street. And so I thought it was kind of a goofy idea, but yeah, so I don't know. He told my husband he just needed his TV, so I built this big box, and I think he added some embellishments, but of course, once it made its way to Heidelberg Street, Tyree took it and did a lot more with it. But it's just kind of fun to see, going to Spelman and see it, the video.
Yes, it was fun taking it to Spelman.
It's a cool idea. And actually, when we took our foundation president, John Earp, there, I think we kind of sat down and met with Tyree. Tyree was behind the TV talking to us, and we were sitting there. It's just a fun thing. It's just a fun thing.
It is, but it actually does loosen people up, because we put it on the campus of Spelman. That's what, I got it. I got the whole thing when I saw it, because I did exactly, I jumped in it. I was like, oh, and I started talking to the doll, because I thought it was great. I loved all that idea. So I wanted to bring it, but it did exactly that. It brought, on the day we have Market Friday, so there were a lot of students going between the campuses. And then people would come, and people sang, people danced, people had conversations, people pretended like they were newscasters. It was quite amazing, the alter egos that came out with the television. When Heidelberg TV came to Spelman campus.
So this is fun. We just enjoy being part of it. It's just like a real privilege to be able to kind of participate in something like that.
Go ahead.
I have one quick question for Dan. I am wondering if the idea of copywriting and artist-built environment has been considered by other sites, or did you copyright the idea? I know, right?
Are you talking about other art installations?
Yeah, other art
Yeah,
environments.
where?
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of it, a book that Aku's mother was one of our editors on. I wrote extensively about the copyright for the Heidelberg project in particular. I've never heard of anybody doing a street. I'm not really familiar with too many other streets that might possibly be able to do something like that. I mean, you think of the famous streets like Deal Street in Memphis and like, but it's something that was actually created and was changed and became sort of an artistic thing. So the Heidelberg project itself is more akin to a sculpture under the word of, the definition of copyright, or what might be copyrightable. But I've heard from people from time to time asking me about, is this legitimate? And, it's registered, so nobody tried to dispute it. In the world of trademarks, if we tried to get a trademark on something, somebody actually could come out and try to dispute it and have our registration thrown out. I'm not really familiar with anybody trying to have a legitimate copyright registration thrown out. The city never tried to do it, so that, for us, I think is a good thing.
What's the name of the book that your chapter's in?
Connecting the Dots. Tyree Guyton's Heidelberg
Yes.
Project, Wayne State University Press in 2008. It was a book award winner for the state of Michigan.
Are you gonna try to trademark Heidelbergology?
Yeah, we've got a few of those in mind. The only trademark that I actually did for anybody affiliated with the project was I trademarked .Troy. That was about 15 years ago. But yeah, we sit down, we had board meetings to say, should we trademark, for example, the iconic face, it's on our newsletters. And, we've gone back and forth on that. I did step away from the project as a board member for, I think it was for 3 years, years ago. You guys have no idea how wonderful this current organization is, as opposed to where it was 15 or so years ago. We were a little dysfunctional. But yeah, we've talked about doing all kinds of different things with the intellectual properties, and we've been working with a gentleman who's an IP attorney at General Motors and at the Dyke Law Firm. I'm more of a business lawyer. So I could get myself into trouble if I start jumping into too many other lanes. So before we had the resources to go out and really find these true experts, I was the one who either had to try to learn it or find somebody that could do it. And I was actually a musician in my undergrad, so music is in my blood, and so copyright has always been part of my blood too. And to me, it's just fascinating.
Thanks.
I was just thinking, it seemed appropriate to make it, to have copyright. Because models could come, you look at them in like Vogue magazines, and you see models and places.
It's funny.
So if they
Funny you say that, my dear, because we actually had W Magazine on Heidelberg Street a few years back, and they brought Kate Moss.
That's right, yes.
And I made sure I was there too. And I have my photo with Kate Moss. Bruce Weber. Bruce Weber, the famous photographer, came and shot it, but they had to get up an appropriate license for us in order to reproduce pictures of Heidelberg Street in W Magazine. MTV has had to do the same thing. They come by and, oftentimes they want us to use their copyright or license form, and oftentimes we tell them that, you can't use yours, because they essentially want to own the rights to this footage. They can use it in all sorts of different ways, which, again, as a nonprofit, we have to follow certain rules. We can't completely sell ourselves out. So. But all of the individual pieces of art, by the way, I should probably point out, so it's covered on the whole street and it evolves, but then you have the individual pieces that Tyree might create, and Tyree, when he creates a piece that stays in the project, we really have to iron this one out. That becomes part of Heidelberg. So the Heidelberg project owns the work and it owns the copyright. Work that Tyree does in his private studio belongs to him, as does the copyright. And so a few years back, I had to write kind of some strict rules for us on blurring that. We might have an exhibition of Tyree Guyton's Heidelberg project. Well, was that Tyree, the artist, or was that Tyree, the guy from the project? So I think as time goes on and we made the mistakes, we figured out a really nice way to discern the two. And as an organization, and I think Tyree himself kind of talked about it, we've always wanted to separate Tyree from the project, meaning it could stand on its own 2 feet. And it's something that we did, it's what he wanted. And it also, me personally and as his lawyer, I thought he had to, because there were a number of years where this was Tyree's job, was working at the Heidelberg project. My job was a lawyer, and at night I'd come to board meetings. Tyree needed to earn a living, and so to earn a living as an artisan, I think we're all proud of the fact that he is now a standalone artist. He's, away from the Heidelberg project. So that's why you might see a little bit more of that. But he is our creative director, he's a lifetime board member. He can come and go as he wants.
All right, well, we are out of time, so I want to thank our panel members. We have Daniel Hoops, Jessica Caramore, Charles Anderson, and Jody Brains.